Would you would please introduce yourself and tell me a bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Chelsea Goucher, and I'm an intuitive coach and psychedelic facilitator. And I'm really interested in the personal growth journey and how, like, awareness itself is such a factor in personal development and what I think is also our collective evolution as humans.
Go into a bit more detail about exactly what it is you do and how you got started with psychedelics and personal growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of started on my personal growth journey, I guess a bit by accident. I was like a stellar student in high school, got a full ride to college, the whole 9 yards. And in college, I completely tanked. I ended up addicted to heroin and methamphetamine for like 3 years. And I ended up actually spending some time in jail. And when I got out of that, I was back in my hometown. I kind of rebuilt my life, and I built a full-blown like corporate sales career. And I got super involved in my community. I was on a bunch of volunteer boards, really just super involved. And I still felt like something was missing. So I kind of started to dig into myself, and I'm like, I feel like I'm always swinging between this pendulum of like walking away from everything and throwing my hands up in the air and really putting myself out there to in a performative way to like really try to live up to the standards that I felt like society had on me to be successful, the things that people expected of me. I'm sure the story sounds somewhat familiar. And I realized that a
Eventually,
lot of my
but that's kind of how I feel. I'm just trying to live up to societal expectations. The one thing I will say is the most freeing revelation was when I realized there's only one person that matters. He died 2,000 years ago on the cross. If Jesus loves me, that's all I need.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that because I do think that what it comes down to is I felt like something in my life was missing. And that's what led me into drugs. But then it's also what led me into my personal growth journey because I also, even when I was successful, I redeemed myself in the eyes of the world. I'd proven that I was a good person, all the things. I was still like, this is not my destiny. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not my purpose. And my corporate sales job, I had a lot of money. Like I said, I had a lot of prestige in my community, but I didn't feel like I was like living up to my potential at all. I felt like I was like the servant of something else and not truly like serving my highest self. And so I can relate to what you're saying, where I feel like for me, it started off as kind of this journey of curiosity and inquiry. And then I realized was a spiritual awakening. And that's really what was happening to me. And then COVID happened, and that just like completely accelerated it, like I know it did for a lot of people. And so all this was going on. I worked with several different life coaches, and I just started studying really hard several different modalities for my own healing that I also wanted to share with people. So I became a yoga teacher. I trained yoga for several years. I continue to teach yoga. I became certified in yoga nidra, and just started exploring different modalities to help me come in contact with like that higher inner consciousness, that Christ consciousness that we all have, that really can see the big picture, and that is like such a warm and nurturing energy to be able to fall back into. And psychedelics happened to be one of the tools that I put in my tool. But as I was going through, like I said, getting these different certifications, eventually getting an intuitive coaching certification, and then wanting to incorporate psychedelics just because of my understanding from personal experience of how powerful they can be, and also because of my experience as an addict and of overcoming, many different aspects of my life that have shown me how much my own mind is like my biggest challenge. And addiction certainly falls into that, as do a lot of other things, anxiety, depression, and different tools like yoga nidra, guided meditation, like I do in my coaching, and psychedelics can all help your brain like loosen up a little bit and accept more than like the very imminent physical 3D world that we're kind of taught to be obsessed with.
I want to clarify something for the viewers here.
Yeah.
Addiction is no fun, I realize that, but the things people get addicted to are often because they're self-medicating for things like anxiety and depression. Would you say the same?
Oh, about could you repeat that last part? I'm sorry, I just
Medicating for like anxiety and depression. And they're different tools in the toolbox.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely are different tools in the toolbox. I mean, and it's not, psychedelics isn't something that's for everyone, obviously. I, again, in my own experience and in my own learning, I really think that obviously things like that are clearly for adults, people that have a developed brain, and also clearly for people that have like a secure ego construct. Like, there are people that have, mental illness on a different level where there's something going on chemically sometimes in the body, um, where, psychedelics wouldn't be a good fit, or they're on medication and it wouldn't be a good fit. There's a lot of the jury's out on, the contraindications of psychedelics with certain antidepressants and things like that. But the training I have is that you don't mix them, that you wait for someone to be at that point in their journey where they're off their pharmaceutical medication, or that's a choice they've made and they want to try something else. So it's not to say that there's not different paths for different people. But personally, this is something that speaks to me. It speaks to me coming from a small community, my own personal experience, and just seeing so many people that I know like caught up in feelings of hopelessness, in feelings of fear and anxiousness, and of just not really being able to, reach their full potential because of the stories that are telling themselves in their head. So a lot of what we, might classify as, mental unwellness, for a lot of people, I think it's much more, we actually have a lot of power over healing it. And we heal it by learning to tell ourselves new stories, whether that's through reading scripture, or whether that's through affirmations, listening to, your favorite guided meditations on, Insight Timer or whatever, or whether it's through psychedelics and actually allowing your brain itself to open up and allow new and different thoughts to come through that once you experience, you're like, oh, I experienced this feeling of, infinite love, or I experienced, fear, or I experienced something about my core self. And once you have that experience with it, then it becomes real and you can become in relation with it, and, start to work with it in order to improve your own
Number
life.
one, you said the phrase Christ consciousness, like, and the infinite love thing. We all have access to that, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we do all have access to it. And that's the thing is, part of my journey has been about realizing how there is so much power that we actually have over our own well-being and over our, our spiritual health, our connection to source energy, and how that, interplays with our body, with our mind, how it's all connected in like this perfect system that we have the capacity to be conscious of and understand. And so, that kind of is like, for me, the most fulfilling thing as a human being is like, how can I learn how to maximize what I've been given to experience this universe? But it's like so against the grain of like how we're brought up in society, and just like kind of, again, how we're taught to narrow our focus to certain things that obviously, benefit certain aspects of society, but maybe to the detriment of our own true, higher selves and our true calling. And ultimately, I think like our spiritual growth, because I think that spiritual growth is very powerful and it can be threatening. But I'm all about, focusing on the way that growth is really, in the end, what I think is going to solve our problems as humanity is people collectively waking up and putting the old stories behind them and actually sitting down and talking to each other and saying, okay, how can we move forward and like, leave the old narratives behind?
Absolutely. Like, um, I don't want to get in trouble, but most people are trapped in the matrix. Like they're
Most people what?
living and they're trapped in the matrix.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The Matrix. Yeah. Yeah, and it is. And that's why, again, why I think really what I always come back to is it's all just about awareness. Because the thing is you don't know what you don't know. And once you really start to question things, you once you start to question things, you start to find out for yourself that there's a lot more that you haven't been aware of because your attention's been diverted a certain way. But really what it comes down to is like you have to I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Oh, what was I going to say? Oh, what I was going to say is that really like what it's all about is tuning back into your intuition. Because that's the thing is, I feel that society in a lot of ways um it kind of molds us to conform to a certain standard or ideal that, like I said, benefits certain aspects of society. And that's often to the detriment of our own authentic expression, our own freedom, our own fulfillment, whatever. And so I feel like really the key is tuning into your intuition. But it's something that most of us aren't trained to listen to because we're taught that the dictates of the outside world, that the external factors of validation or shame, kind of like, the carrot and stick, that's the marker of like who we are and that defines us. But tuning into your intuition is what makes you start to define yourself and realize, oh, this is who I truly am and this is what I'm about. And you start to realize that what's good for you isn't always good for everyone else and vice versa. You realize that like the what's good for the goose is good for the gander thing isn't necessarily true. That's not to say there's not something close to universal truth, but it's to say that we're here to experience a diversity as human beings. And it's really about owning our own truth and allowing that light to shine and allowing it to free other people to shine their own light. And that's why, the coaching I do is really about honing yourself into your intuition. But part of that is first cutting through the aspects in your mind, your monkey brain, that are disallowing you from hearing that intuition. And that's where the different modalities like meditation and
Like,
psychedelics come
I
into the
do
picture.
believe there are some universal truths like freedom of choice and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But there are other parts of things in the mind that are up to the individual, and that's the thing. It's about your mindset as an individual, mindset mastery is the most important thing.
It absolutely is. I mean, mastery of your own mind is the most important thing. Being able to clear out the clutter, to recognize your thoughts objectively, recognize what's yours, what isn't yours, what's helpful, what isn't helpful. To be able to listen to that deep gut feeling, that inner voice, that source energy speaking through you, to be a clear channel for that, and to know what's moving you forward and what isn't is so powerful. I mean, mastery over your own mind really is everything. And because our mind isn't us. Again, like I said, it's technology that we've been given to experience this physical world. It's like the computer part of us, but we're not the computer. You know what I mean? And so it
A
really is so important.
biology given by God.
Right. Right, exactly. And so it's like, it's so important that we learn how to operate it. And the same goes for like our bodies and what's good for our health. And kind of going back to what we were saying before about tuning into your intuition, and your own, personal growth journey, that all applies to your physical health as well. You start to recognize that, you can pay attention to your body, you can track and start to listen to, what foods make you feel good, what foods make you feel bad, whether medications are really helping you or harming you. And like, once you really start to listen to all of it, it's not just in your mind, it's in your body too. And you start to realize that you have a lot of wisdom within you, both physically and mentally, that you have, like you said, access to.
I'm curious, where can people find you if they want to get in touch and if they want to learn more about your message?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find me on Instagram. My handle there is Awakening Chandra, and Chandra is Chandra. And then also I have a
Link
website,
all these down in the
awakeningchandra.com.
description. Uh, and thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
real quick, what's
Yeah, one thing I want to leave people with is just kind of tying it all back together to awareness and to consciousness expansion, to becoming aware of yourself as bigger than just the thoughts going through your head, having that mental mastery, tuning into the truth in your own body, in your own connection to source. All of it is incredibly important. And I think it takes, personal growth, personal development, and like self-care, self-love to really the next level, because it does open it up to the spiritual reality, which is that all aspects of us need to be cared for. And doing that, I think, is really powerful. I think that it can be easy to, we don't make the time for ourselves. Again, we're not taught as a society to prioritize ourselves. We often learn to get our validation from having to care for other people, which is a little bit, twisted in a way. But really, we have to know that caring for ourselves is so important, and that truly healing ourselves and stepping into our own light and our own power is going to change the world. I think it's so easy to press on external factors, to be, to complain about things, to be upset about what's happening in the collective, to be, angry about who said this or what this person did. And it's not to say those things aren't important, but it's to understand that life will always be what it is on this earth. There's good and there's bad, there's dark and there's light. And our job is to shine our light and learn to master ourselves. And that doing that is not selfish. It's not a waste of time. It's not a privilege. It's really what truly will transform society, because you can't shove anything down anyone else's throat. You can only lead from example and lead them into a higher understanding that will free them to have the vulnerability, compassion, empathy, and understanding to actually want to have conversations with people that might threaten their beliefs or threaten, their lifestyles or whatever. And I believe that that will heal the world. So I would absolutely say, if you're on a journey of personal growth, if you're on a spiritual awakening journey, find people who can walk that path with you, who can be of support, and who really are of the like mind that it's incredibly powerful work, it's important, and it is part of our collective evolution. It's us as humans becoming more aware of ourselves and what we've been creating for the last thousands of years, and whether we want to now pivot and create something better. Thank you.